Great. Next we have Lieutenant Commander Sean Heritage, and he's from U.S. Cybercom's Joint Exercises and Training Organization, and he'll be talking about cooperative leadership models.
Well, I hope you leave after this talk knowing that I am not overly rank conscious, but I am not a lieutenant commander anymore. Maybe someday again. But before we get started, there's two things that I would like to do. First, for those of you who didn't have the benefit of seeing me walk the red carpet this morning, I am in fact wearing a Hanes hoodie today that has been modified slightly by my bride to reflect the inspiration of one Mark Zuckerberg out in Silicon Valley, to reinforce the talk today, which is about the intersection between creativity and structure, the intersection between Silicon Valley and traditional Navy culture, and that intersection that the Nyack Pensacola team attempted to lead for the time that I was their commanding officer for 26 months. The other thing I'd like to point out is Petty Officer Duncan here in the audience helped me significantly with all the graphics, so I did not have to go down the path of boring you all with bullets. So thank you, Petty Officer Duncan. So I mentioned Silicon Valley, I mentioned the traditional military culture, and I will not claim to be an expert in Silicon Valley. I did grow up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I did spend a half a day at Google once upon a time. I have many friends who work in the Valley, and in fact, my brother does work at Cisco. So I only know what they choose to share with me or what I have read about the culture out there. But having been wearing the uniform for over 24 years, I am pretty familiar with what the traditional military culture is all about. And I'm not here to admonish it or say that we should look exactly like Silicon Valley. Today I'm here to talk about the power of finding the best of both worlds, of ensuring the best practices of each are met in the middle, and that share some of the stories of the experiments that we had down in Nyack, Pensacola that helped us to truly find that intersection. Now, I'm very proud of the Nyack, Pensacola team. I've used that, I refer to them probably 5 times in the 2 minutes that I've been here on stage. So Nyack, Pensacola is the Navy Information Operations Command down in Pensacola, Florida. It's a team of which I was a part for 26 months, started in July of 2010. And this is a picture from our days early on. And back when I got there, there was about 155 sailors and civilians on the team. And when I left, there was 225. But I'm not here to talk today about the numbers that made up our team. I'm here more to talk about the experiments that we had and the way we chose to lead as we tried to migrate and develop our own unique culture that was, in fact, representative of the intersection. Now, for me, it's impossible to talk about an organization without first acknowledging the values to which they are committed. And I think that any of us, a part of whichever organizations we've been a part in the past, can acknowledge that there were values that were associated with the team that we were on. They may have been written on a wall somewhere. They may have been on a web page. And some of us may even have committed them to memory. But we didn't necessarily bring them to life and make them a part of our day. So the top 3 in stencil you see are representative of any organization, especially in the military. They're nothing special. They did not make us unique in the least. That 4th one, entrepreneurship, did. And what we mean by entrepreneurship, above and beyond that of innovation, is we were focused on the outcome. We were focused on creating new and unique value that other commands were not contributing, and new and unique value that we were not previously contributing. And we were committed to not being afraid to fail along the way as we tried to develop that new value. Now I have here the bobblehead. So I mentioned before that we've been part of organizations where there were value statements written on a wall, and they may have meant nothing to us. But I believe that it's the values that a team shares that defines the behavior of that team. And when we were in Pensacola, we realized the power of the bobblehead. And we used this bobblehead as a means of reinforcing and incentivizing the behaviors that were communicated in our value statements. And each month at the awards ceremony, we'd pull up 1, 2, maybe 3 sailors and civilians who did more than others when it came to those 4 values, and they really brought them to life. And in doing so, 2 things happened. The first thing that happened, we noticed, is that over time, the individuals really aspired to achieving the bobblehead and having a bobblehead displayed proudly on their desk. They were not too consumed about the medals we might pin on their chest, but the bobblehead on their desk was a source of pride. And that is what they really, really wanted. And that's what we really wanted to give them. The other thing that we noticed, the 4 values that we were committed to, the one that we found reason to celebrate and recognize most was that of entrepreneurship. And even when we migrated the award away from a command triad pull model to a peer-centric model where peers nominated each other for such recognition, that even then it was entrepreneurship, not teamwork, not continual improvement, and not effective communication. It was entrepreneurship that the team wanted to and found reason to celebrate amongst their peer group. As we migrated our way towards the intersection, there was 4 lines of effort. One was that of over-communicating the why. We wanted everybody on our team to understand why we were doing what we were doing. We wanted them to care enough, and we wanted to communicate to them that we did in fact understand why we were doing the things we were asked to do. We were committed to competence over collar device. And that's a catchy catchphrase, and I'll talk more about that later. But we were purposeful and not assuming anything about the rank insignia that somebody wore when they came to our team. It was all about the value that they were able to deliver as specialized experts in our mission area. We recognized that failure was a path to success, and it wasn't so much as we were willing and wanting to reward failure. We were willing and ready to recognize those who were not afraid to fail. Sometimes they failed, and we still celebrated them, but we wanted to celebrate those who were willing to get outside their comfort zone and risk failure. And the 4th is 360-degree feedback, which really amounts to self-awareness or awareness of each other as a team. Now, as I was preparing for command, my family, we were up in Newport, Rhode Island. I was going to command leadership school, and we did go to a Barnes & Noble. And I walked in, and I found a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. And it talks about how great organizations aren't overly focused on what it is they do or how they do it. They're more focused on why they do it. And I think those of us who work in this building, whether or not we wear a uniform, know why we come to work. We come to work because we want to be part of something that is bigger than ourselves. We want to contribute in meaningful ways to our nation's defense. But down in Pensacola, we wanted to take a step further. We wanted everybody on the team to share in what it is we were doing. And we found that the way to that path was by helping all to understand the why. We wanted all the juniors on our team to ask why. Not because it was subordination. Why are you telling me to do this? Why do I need to do this? But we wanted them to want to understand why so that they could own the how and in some cases shape the what that we did. And we wanted to demonstrate to our juniors that we were in fact masters of what it is we were asking them to do. So we were grounded in the why. This is a loose description of our command structure up there. What you see is various rank insignias, top to bottom. Traditional. What you see highlighted in green are the anomalies. They are the exceptions. They are where we allowed competence to trump collar device, where we saw that the most qualified individual might in fact be junior to, from a pay grade standpoint, their senior. We were not overly proud of doing this, but we were proud of the fact that we were willing to do this. And our shared insight, or shared outcome, desired outcome anyway, was of getting it right, was to helping our competence and our collar devices to align. Now, one of the unique things in Pensacola, and that in the Cryptologic Technician Network's rating, is that we had a lot of people on our team that were an engineman, a fire controlman, a sonar tech, what have you, one day, and now they're cryptologic technicians. They are great first-class petty officers in their old rate. They may be great first-class petty officers, but they may not be great first-class petty officers in their new rate. And we wanted them to understand that we had a responsibility with them to help them to raise the bar and grow into their new rating badge at the same time as they're growing into their collar device. Now, I mentioned entrepreneurship, and I truly believe that that is all founded on not being afraid to failure. We used to say that fear of failure is not authorized. And I think we probably all can point to historical figures, people in our lives even, that have failed along the way, only to enjoy great success through trial and error. And I can tell you many stories about failure down at Pensacola. In fact, there was a while where we had a failure of the week where a sailor would get up and say, "This is how I messed up this week." Not because we were going to make fun of them, but we wanted them to know that we cared enough to learn from, with, and through them, and it was far better to learn from somebody else's mistakes or failure than it was to do so ourselves. But there's one story I'd like to share with you, and that is of a Petty Officer Murphy. Early in my time down there, we gave ourselves permission, which we often did. This time we gave ourselves permission to host the Cryptologic Technician Network's collaboration conference. We realized that the CTN rate was rather new, that shipmates across the commands did not know much about each other on a personal level, nor did they have a good appreciation for the overall portfolio of operational responsibilities for that rate. So we had first-class petty officers from across the fleet come to Nyack, Pensacola, and spend a week with us to share best practices and just general awareness about what it means to be a CTN at various places. So as we were planning the conference, the first thing we needed was a leader. We needed a volunteer. And it didn't take long for Petty Officer Murphy to identify himself. He came down to my office and he said, "Sir, I really would like this opportunity." And as I so often did, I asked him why. Why do you want this opportunity? And he said in no uncertain terms there was two reasons. First is he saw that there was an important evolution and he wanted to be a part of it, and he wanted to be a part of its success. So how could I say no to that? The second was the acknowledgement that he was an engineman not too long ago, and he had not done anything like this before in his life. And he knew that the way to personal growth and development was through getting as far outside of your comfort zone as possible. So he wanted to be a part of this, and he wanted to lead the charge. And I'll tell you that it wasn't easy going, that he had never written a record message traffic before in his life. And the first one he wrote was horrible. And we helped him, and we fixed it, and he learned. He had never planned the logistical support for a conference of any magnitude, let alone this. He didn't know what he was doing, and he forgot many things early on, but we helped him to get it right. And then he had never really presented nor developed a brief of any depth. But he was willing to do that, and he tried. And not only was the brief horrible, but he didn't know how to deliver it. We worked with him, and it was a wonderful brief. It was a wonderful conference, and it was a success by all measure. And it was 2 weeks after the conference where it took the opportunity to bring him up on stage and present him with the bobblehead, because he was so willing to be outside of his comfort zone, because he was willing to make mistakes, and he did fail along the way, but ultimately delivered great success for the command and for the CTN rating. The fourth line of effort is that of the 360-degree feedback and self-awareness. There were three things that we did down in Pensacola along this line of effort. And I'll be the first to admit that I've been long frustrated with the way we in the military do midterm counseling. That many, many times I've been told, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, "Hey, Sean, consider yourself counseled. Today is 22 April, put that in your fitness report." Well, I like constructive feedback. I want to become better. So what we did with midterm counselings in Pensacola was we did 360-degree feedback for all E6s and above. In fact, I still have the two counselings that I received from my shipmates E3 to 04 that were very constructively critical of me and allowed me to focus my continual improvement efforts. And I was very much appreciative of that. Two other things that we did was, one, as time was getting short and I was preparing for the change of command, I had to write fitness reports for all the chief petty officers and above. So because I value the input of all, and I do recognize that too many of us focus more on how we are perceived by our juniors than we are respected by our juniors and peers, I asked all the leading petty officers, the first classes, to come down to my office, and they were going to rank the chiefs. And they ranked the chiefs. Now, I'll tell you that I did not blindly take their recommendations, but their recommendations did surely inform my decisions. And they were a big part of how I ranked their bosses. There was so much meaning in that the week later, we got the chiefs together, and we had them rank the senior chiefs. And then we took the chiefs and the senior chiefs, and they ranked the junior officers. And I was left with a far better informed decision of how we were going to rank our individuals. The third example of how we were committed to this 360-degree input was that in the civilian hiring process. We had a civilian vacancy that we needed to hire. And I know all too well the importance of getting a civilian hire right, because if you get it wrong, it's really, really hard to undo. So in doing so, we selected the individuals that we wanted to interview, and I put together a panel that included E4s, E5s, E6s, as well as future peers and seniors for the individual that we would hire. Those people who came to the interview were a little shocked to see the faces of such junior people asking them questions. But we wanted them to know right then and there that we were committed to being a team in a 360-degree array, and that we valued each and every member of our team. And I'm told that everybody still is happy with the decision we made that was based in large part by the input of juniors as well as seniors. So I'd be lying to you if I told you that we found the intersection. We didn't find the intersection. We got pretty close, and that's one of the reasons why I am here today. You know, now I work in the J7 up at US Cybercom, and our mandate really is to create a trained and ready cyber force. And in doing so, we're quick to commit to knowledge, skills, abilities that these individuals must have. We define mission essential tasks that they will be able to execute, and we define training standards. But we do not talk about how we will lead this team once they are in fact trained and ready. We don't talk about how we should go about developing an entrepreneurial spirit amongst this force. We don't talk about the benefits of empowering everybody to explore the art of the possible and be willing to fail as things go. Maybe these conversations are happening and I'm just not part of them, but I think that we need to have them. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Lorax, but I have a 10-year-old boy, and I've read this to him a few times. He's read it himself, etc. And I did mention at the front that I am wearing a little thing inspired by Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, but I also come as the Lorax in some cases. That when I see here, I see the truffula trees, and the truffula trees to me remind me of the sailors that I served with in Nyack, Pensacola. The ones that were especially junior, that knew their stuff inside and out and did great things and allowed the command to reach new heights. And I still keep in contact with a lot of these sailors. And I see that some of them are struggling more than others as they try to assimilate in a more traditional military culture. In fact, it was a month ago, I got an email from a young E5 telling me, actually, sir, I've been talking with my peers, and we were great when we were all together in Pensacola, but we're not so great now. Do you have some time so we can talk? And he called me that night, and we talked through it, and he explained to me that he had sent me the email from TAP class where he was beginning to plan his transition to leave the Navy. A sailor that I respected a great deal and made us better is planning his exit strategy because he cannot assimilate within the traditional culture. 2 weeks after that, I was in contact with a sailor from another command who wanted to purposely fail his third PRT as a way to expedite his way out of the Navy. Now, I use those two examples, but I fully acknowledge that there are other sailors that are flourishing and other cultures that are more like what we had in Pensacola. But I do fear that, though it is not necessarily intentional, the oncelers of the world are in fact cutting down the truffula trees and not allowing us to realize our potential. So, I didn't really come here to brag about all the great things we did in Nyack, Pensacola, and I could go on for hours about the great fun we had as we did some pretty incredible things down there. I came here as a way to self-identify myself as a person who was committed to helping us find this intersection, and hoping that by me communicating with you, you might choose to join the tribe, make us part of your tribe as we collectively work together to work towards this intersection so that we can truly have a culture that is capable of leading the cyber force once it is in fact trained and ready. So thank you.